this computer.
Cool. Hello, thanks for joining us for our first round of Bellingham Park series. I'm here at Sehome Arboretum. Show you where we are on this map here. Let me just turn the camera around. Sorry if the camera's a little shaky, it's my first time filming a Zoom, but we are up here on Jersey Street, and we're gonna make our way this way. We're gonna kind of come up to the watchtower, and then we might try to make our way down this way. Other ways of getting to this park are from the 25th Street and behind Fairhaven, and multiple places behind campus and up by Old Main. Additionally on Bill McDonald Parkway. This is a super cool arboretum. It's jointly owned by Western Washington and the city. And before we start walking on this trail, I'm just gonna read a little bit of a land acknowledgement, because we are on stolen land. So I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are together today, virtually, on the ancestral homeland of the coastal Salish people who have lived in the Salish Sea basin throughout the San Juan Islands and the North Cascades watershed from time immemorial. And gratitude for our indigenous neighbors, the Lummi Nation, the Nooksack tribe, and their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Sweet. So, on this walk, I'm gonna tell you guys some of the history of the Sehome Arboretum, and I'm also gonna talk about some plants, and all the information that I have on plants I got from this book, Plants of the Pacific Northwest by Pojar. It's a super good book for learning about plants in the area. So if you're interested by this, you can buy it on Amazon for 20 bucks used. You can buy an older version, and it's very effective. All right, so we're gonna start walking. Show you where we are. We're gonna go up these beautiful steps. There's some dandelions. Sweet. So the Sehome Arboretum has 175.5 acres of land, and there are 6 miles of trails. So it's a super good place for students and community members to come out and enjoy this little bit of beautiful habitat. It was established as a park in 1967, and it was protected against logging in 1969. So because there was logging in the 1900s, this is a second growth forest, and you can tell that that's the case by kind of a more open canopy, like you can see in the video. And there's also specific plant species that are indicative of a second growth forest. One of those being a red alder tree. And I'll point that out when we come up to one. Don't see any here. Some other information about this arboretum is before it was a park, and before it was, ooh, did we get a new person in the call? Cool. Anyways, before it was a park and before it was logged, it was actually a site for coal mining. So in 1850s, there was a coal mining operation in this area, and so there are many tunnels lacing this hill. Many of them are unknown in their location, but we're gonna see one of the tunnels up towards the top once we get closer to the watchtower. So this is a botanical garden, so its current use is for education and as a wildlife refuge. So that's why we're going to talk about some of the plants that we're seeing and how various coastal Salish people used and now we are right there, you can see, and we're gonna head up the dotted trail because it's a nice scenic route. Going up this gravel way takes you on a more direct path to the watchtower. Sweet. So the first plant I want to talk about that we're seeing a lot of in this area right here are oso berries. So that is this one right here, these bright green leaves. This is a native plant, and they have little plums that were a pretty large portion of the fruit eaten by coastal Salish people. They kind of look like plums, but they're smaller. And you can tell that it's springtime because the leaves are out, and these are some of the first leaves to sprout out at the beginning of spring. You can also see that there are many sword ferns on the understory of this forest. And this deep understory, or this thick understory foliage is one of those indicators I was talking about earlier about how this is a second growth forest. And that means that there's been disturbance in the recent past in the form of logging for this particular place. The next plant I want to identify for you guys is this one. This is a native plant, and this also has edible berries. They're not the most delicious, but they are edible and they're fun. Keep on walking. This is a great area of the forest here to take a look at the trees. So most of the trees in this area right here are Douglas firs. You can tell that their bark, by their bark, that they're Douglas firs because they have that wavy, deep ridged bark. And here's some a branch from a Douglas fir. You can see all of the little leaves that the Douglas fir has. And something interesting about this plant is that they're actually not part of the fir family. They're closer related to hemlocks than they are to firs. This plant, this tree here, is a really special tree to the area. This is called Western Red Cedar. And, oops, sorry. There's a coastal Salish myth that says that the Great Spirit made the red cedar in honor of a man that was always helping people. So for many indigenous cultures, the red cedar is a very important, has a lot of energy that's very important to people. The red cedar also has many uses. Many dugout canoes are made out of red cedars, and totem poles, and fishing lines, and the bark is really cool and special because it has this flaky characteristic. It can be used to make baskets. See how you can kind of take pieces like that, and when you soak them in water, they become more malleable, and you can make things out of them. Look at that sunshine coming down, helping all the understory plants. The next plant I want to talk about is this little guy right here. So this is most likely, we'll find out soon when it actually flowers and has fruit, but it's most likely a red huckleberry. And it was eaten by most First Nations in the area. And its leaves and bark were often gargled to help with sore throat. It's a super cool berry, but some cultures had a myth that these huckleberries were created by a monster woman of the woods called Asen. And those who ate her berries lost their reason and were carried off to the woods. So some indigenous cultures wouldn't eat these berries because of the bad omen that was associated with them. But they are in fact edible berries and they're really scrumptious. This understory plant here, you can tell it's a little bit different than the huckleberry leaves because they're a little bit bigger and rounder. And snowberries, once they start to flower and fruit, have little white squishy berries that are pretty tender, and they are considered to be pretty poisonous. And in various languages, in various First Nation languages, they were called like corpse berries, and another name for them was Saskatoon berries of the land of the dead. So Saskatoon berries are edible berries that are similar to huckleberries, but a little bit less sweet. So these little white berries were considered the same staple of food, but for the dead. But some cultures actually use them to help with stomach aches. So they would eat 2 to 5 berries to help with the stomach ache after eating a lot of fatty foods. I don't know the science behind that, if you should go do that these days. Maybe try some Tums. This is another snowberry plant, and something I really like about their leaves is that they all are kind of differently shaped. You can see that. Let's see if it focuses. There we go. They all kind of have weird different shapes. Some of them are round, some of them have little ridges. And this is a form of phenotypic plasticity that these plants are able to do. And that is, phenotypic plasticity is when one plant or parts of plants have differing characteristics depending on their specific habitat. Grow a slightly different shape in order to maximize the amount of sunlight it can get and allow lower leaves to get sunlight as well. So that's pretty neat. Once they get bigger, you'll be able to really identify them by oddly lobed shaped leaves. And I think they're really pretty. All right, let's continue on walking. So this is a Douglas fir cone. I kind of showed you what Douglas fir looked like earlier. Here's some up here. There's a bigger one right there. There it goes all the way up. This is a cone that has dropped from the top of one of these trees. And if you look closely, you can see that there's little mouse-shaped looking, there you go, things coming out of each cone, like leaf basically. And there's a coastal Salish myth about the origin of this shape. And that myth is that there was a forest fire in one of the big forests in the area, and all of the animals were scrambling, trying to find a safe place to hide during the fire. And there was a field mouse, and it started running around, panicking a bit, trying to figure out where to go. It decides to run up a Douglas fir tree, and the fox laughs at the and you're gonna die at the top of that tree. But the field mouse squished its head inside the cone and couldn't get quite its whole body in there. But because the cones are resistant to fire, the field mouse was able to live. And to this day, the field mouse still hides in the Douglas fir cone. So that's kind of a fun story about that, and it has some factual basing, like the cones are resistant to fire. That's what allows them to persist after a forest fire. Cool. There's another red cedar right there. Super beautiful. We're coming up here to another really common and that is the big leaf maple. Right here. You can see that there's some moss growing on it. Once there's more water available, more moss will grow. On all of these big leaf maples, and in the area they're actually the tree that fosters the most growth on its bark. Sometimes in areas like the Olympic Peninsula where there's a lot of rain and develops a layer of soil on the bark because there's so much moss. And there also is typically a certain kind of fern called a licorice fern, which we'll see further down the way on this walk. And they grow so thick on these trees that it can create a layer of soil, which is super interesting. In some indigenous languages, this type of tree is called a paddle tree because its wood has been used to make many paddles. It also has the ability to sprout out of its stump. So if you see a stump with a bunch of sprouts coming out of it, chances are it's probably a big leaf maple, and it's pretty cool that it has that ability to regrow after it's been cut down. We'll keep on walking. And if anybody has any questions or wants to add anything during this video, please chime in. I would love to hear it. Sweet. Ooh. Oh, nice. This is also a really common plant in the area. This is called ocean spray. And it has these little ridged leaves. It's another one of those early sprouters, along with the oso berry, which you can also see back there. And this has like a really beautiful white flower. You can see a dried one from last season, but they kind of come out like a firework, and that's where they get their name of ocean spray, because they look like a wave crashing, but a wave crashing in the forest. There's a bunch of these on the inner urban on the way down to Boulevard from downtown Bellingham. So if you want to see them in full swing, spring, that's a great place to go look for them. We'll keep on walking. The Arboretum is a great place to come. It's right behind campus, and if you need a break from all the people once we're back in normal campus life, it's a great place to seclude yourself in this little pocket of nature that we have here. A lot of people come here to run and hike. You're not supposed to bike in here, but there's plenty of things to see without doing that. There are a few rope swings which are periodically put up by students and taken down by administration. So it's kind of a fun scavenger hunt to try to find those before they're taken down. But when you find them, try not to tell too many people because it's a fun little scavenger hunt. Hi. Thanks. Yeah. Ooh. This here is a plant we haven't seen yet. This is called a western hemlock. You can distinguish it from the Douglas fir because its leaves are shorter, and on the top they're much darker than on the bottom. You can tell you can kind of see white on these ones. That's because this tree's fallen down and you can see the bottoms of some of the leaves. It also has really tiny cones. They're really cute. They're a super cool tree. They tend to grow on fallen down great red cedars or big red cedars. So it kind of goes to show the power that those red cedars have. They can even give their power away once they've died to other species. Right here, you can see some trailing blackberry, and this is the native type of blackberry to the area. You can see it right there. It's got 3 leaves, and they kind of stay close to the ground, unlike the Himalayan blackberry that take over many areas, many disturbed areas around this part of the world. So the trailing blackberries are an interesting plant because there can be a whole field of them that's only male or female. So you might find a whole field of them at this time in the year and realize that it doesn't have any fruit because it's the wrong kind, it's the wrong gender. So that's kind of interesting. You have to wait until it's time to fruit to know if it's going to have any fruit at all. This right here are the fiddleheads, which are the baby ferns of lady fern. And definitely, if like, there's definitely edible fiddleheads. Make sure you do some personal research before you go out and pick some, because some of the species in the area are toxic, and I don't think they'll kill you, but they won't make you feel good. So do some research before you go out and pick some to eat.
Karey, I have a question about the blackberries.
Yeah.
Is the native blackberries, like, are they similar to the common blackberries we see on the sides of roads and trails, like the invasive ones?
Yeah, so the ones that you see on the sides of trails and roads and that can like kind of take over whole fences, that kind is Himalayan blackberry, and those are invasive. They can kind of take over the whole understory, and you can distinguish them by their leaves. Thank you. You can distinguish them by their leaves because they have 5 at the end of each stem rather than 3.
And
They're still,
are the berries the same, like in how they look and how they taste?
yeah, they're pretty similar. The Himalayan blackberries are a little bit bigger,
Mm,
but they're still both just berries, blackberries.
cool.
Yeah, I have a question from a person on. Yeah, hi. I'm actually making a video right now for the outdoor center. Oh, this one? I'm pretty sure that one is French cup.
French cup? I see
Yeah.
them all over today.
Yeah, I think the ones that sprouts, I'm not exactly sure, but I think these are the ones that once they sprout, they kind of have little cups.
Ah,
that.
okay. I've never seen them before.
Yeah.
I worked this for the last, whatever, 15 years.
Oh, cool.
So,
Sweet.
so you from the Outback?
The outdoor center.
Outdoor.
Yeah, we're trying to do virtual excursions, so I'm doing a little plant walk through the yard.
Show them the stangen nettles, the edible.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Have a good walk. Thanks. No, you're good. Sweet. So nice fella on the trail says that there's going to be some stinging nettle coming up. Let's see. This path here heads down towards 25th and Bill McDonald Parkway. So if you like want to head towards Hagen's and you want to walk through the Arb, you can walk through this path. Here's on the trail map where we are. But Tara, did that answer your question about the blackberries?
Yeah, that was perfect. Thanks.
Cool. Whew. Got a spider web in my face. This is one of my favorite little offshoots here. Leads to a nice rock. You can go check that out. If you can find this trail again. This one right here, this little teeny flower, is going to be a really cute little flower that looks like a star. This is a native understory flower. It's called a star flower. They're really cute. My favorite flower. Right here on the bottom of this Douglas fir is licorice fern. And these ferns typically grow on trees and rocks. Their rhizome, which is basically their taproot, it comes all the way up the tree when it's really high. So if you see one at the top of a tree, that's probably actually the same plant that's at the base of the tree. And you can actually eat the rhizome of this fern, which is, again, that taproot structure. Sore throat, and it has a lot of helpful things. You can also make a tea out of it. I'm not a fan of it because I don't like licorice, but if you like licorice, it's a yummy thing to chew on. There's a lot of it up in the chestnuts, and you can typically find it on big leaf maples. But if you are going to forage for it, please try to grab part of it that is as high up the tree as you can, because it is all connected from the top to the bottom. So you might kill some at the top by just taking a little bit from the middle.
Is that the same plant that is called licorice root, like in tea ingredients and stuff?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Cool, cool.
The next plant that's right here is called salal. See those big leaves? And salal has edible berries, as well as red huckleberries, and Oregon grape. And this is probably the biggest staple of berry, staple for berries for many of the coastal Salish tribes. For the Haida people, which is a tribe on the coast of Canada. It's on a little island called Haida Gwaii. That's where they're native to. These people typically used salal berries to thicken salmon berries, so they would mix them in with salmon berries to like make the delicious salmon berries run or keep longer so that they could keep eating them. Down here below what I think is a vine maple, so it's like the big leaf maples, but it's smaller and has smaller leaves, is a little rose plant. I don't know exactly what kind, but it's a native rose plant. I don't know what the exact name is though. Most of the native, but they're not very tasty. Here's some more of those rose plants. Right there is another western hemlock, and something that's really helpful for identifying them is if you can see the tip of the tree like you can on this one, it tends to flop over a bit, whereas Douglas firs and other coniferous trees don't tend to do that. So you can kind of see that the tip is flopped over.
You know why the tip of the tree flops over?
I think it just has to do with less thick of bark, and yeah, it doesn't have like as sturdy of bark as Douglas firs have. See, this is a Douglas fir, and it has like really thick bark. But that's my best guess.
Cool, thanks.
Something that's interesting about bark and the way it looks is if trees have more rigidy bark with like deep crevices, like Douglas firs have, they're more likely to, because usually during lightning storms there's a lot of rain, and on a tree like this, the rain would come, it would accumulate on these big cracks. Whereas on a tree like a hemlock or a big leaf maple, it has less crevices in the bark, so the water would disperse across the whole surface better. So when it kind of accumulates in the cracks and then it got hit by lightning, then the electricity would have a higher likelihood of popping open the tree. Ooh, robin. Hello, robin. Let's see if we can see some of that stinging. One type of fern that we won't be seeing today, but you might be able to see when it comes closer to the rainy season, are maiden's hair fern. And that kind of fern, similar to the licorice fern, likes to grow on rocks and kind of come off the side of things. You can identify it by, oops, I'm dropping papers. You can identify it by a black stem, and it has kind of a different shape than most ferns in the area. The stems of that kind of fern were often used to make baskets.
I lost your video, Karey. Is it on?
Oops.
Cool.
There we go. Sweet. Right here we can see some periwinkle flowers. They're really cute little flowers. These are actually an introduced species from Europe, and they tend to be pretty invasive because you notice that you can see our periwinkles. You can't see any of those star flowers or French cups that that one fellow asked about. So it tends to kind of take over the understory. Other things that you can do in the Arb are bouldering, and there's a little bit of climbing. This is a tunnel that is here from the time of mining in the area. But you can now kind of do a little bit of bouldering on the inside of that. And then there's more. Oh, actually, there's somebody doing it right now. Somebody's bouldering. There's also more climbing and bouldering further south in the Arboretum. People also practice belaying from trees, which I don't know what the purpose of that is for, but there's some trees just west of here that people belay off of. On this tree, this is a big leaf maple. You can see that there's some moss and licorice fern on it. There's also some English ivy, which is another invasive species in this forest. And if not like killed by conservationists, it can take over a whole tree and a whole forest, suffocating the tree from receiving light. So that's pretty scary, but it doesn't seem to be a huge problem in this forest at this point. Sometimes when I walk through this forest or others close by, I like to imagine what it looked like before logging and mining occurred. Because before that, or if that hadn't happened, right here would be an old growth forest. And there would be super big, super old trees. And here there'd be less of these big leaf maples. There'd be probably no red alder trees. And there'd be more Douglas firs and cedars. And probably less of an understory. Right now I'm kind of heading further south. At that intersection is where you can head up to the watchtower. And it's super fun to watch the sunset from there. It's really beautiful. You can see Bellingham. Oh, can you guys see the squirrels? Whoa, whoa.
Can you point them out?
Yeah, they're right up here in this tree. Anymore, I guess, but either they really, really don't like each other or they really like each other. I can't tell. This here is one of those Himalayan blackberries. You can see it has 5 leaves. And you can see how it kind of grows on top of things. This blackberry is growing on top of ocean spray. And if it keeps growing, it'll suffocate the other plants in this part of the forest. The Sehome Arboretum is made out of primarily sandstone. So there's some formations of sandstone that kind of outcrop that are fun to look at and are some of the things that people climb on in the Arboretum. Here's an outcropping that you can kind of see. It's called Split Rock, I think. And it's in memory of Ronald J. Taylor, PhD, professor of biology. He led the establishment and preservation of the Sehome Hill Arboretum. So that's pretty cool, 1932 to 1998. It's pretty in line with the information I found on the web about how this hill was protected from logging in 1969. So it's cool that that professor had a big hand in protecting this little bit of forest. Here's the parking lot that you can drive up to from basically the Fairhaven dorms. And it's a great access point to come up here. And then it's pretty accessible because there's a paved path here, and the paved path goes all the way up to the watchtower. So that's great that it's an accessible place. The paved path used to be a road, that tourists could drive through. But now the road stops up here at the top, and you can't drive all the way through the Arb anymore. You can kind of see the Bellingham Bay peeking out down there. See if we can, trying to find a red alder that I can point out to you all, because I think they're super cool trees. Because they have a relationship with a certain kind of fungus in their roots that allows them to fix nitrogen, like atmospheric nitrogen, into the soil. And that's why they're super helpful after disturbances, because they make the soil really habitable for other species. But they typically only live to be 50 years old. So there might not be a whole lot of them in this forest, but I know I've seen a few before. Not today though. Oh, I think this is one actually. Yeah, right here is a red alder. Leaves come out, and once it becomes fall and they're falling, you can identify them because they're kind of spade shaped and they have ridges. I kind of like to think of them as a Pringle, or not a Pringle, but are like a Ruffle Lay's chip, because they're all wavy. They look like a chip, but they probably don't taste as good. Red alders were considered by many First Nations as the best kind of wood to smoke salmon with. And the inner bark, oops, you guys able to see me now?
Yep, all good.
Cool. The inner bark was often eaten in the spring. So it's got some helpful usages. It's also a very pretty tree. The other habitat that it typically grows in are riparian zones, so like floodplains, because they're often flushed out by floods, allowing it to only grow for 50 years and then regrow. Sweet. And this trail here, if you keep following it, it'll lead you back to Fairhaven Dorms area. So if any people are living on campus still, it's a great place to access the Arb from. And I know we have 10 more minutes, but I am about to run out of battery on my cell phone. So.
I have a comment.
Yeah?
I enjoyed this so much. I sat here and ate lunch. I educated. This was incredible.
Oh, thank you, Fred. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this was really good. My hope is that we can utilize your help with some introductions like this around the challenge course and what it provides for people.
Yeah, I would like to do that. That would be good.
I wish you would keep doing this in all areas, whether we come back or not. You are incredible.
Oh, thank you, Fred. I really appreciate that.
I really enjoyed this. So have a good day. That was cool.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Sweet. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, do you have anything else to add, Tara? Or else I'm gonna exit out.
I think I'm all good. If you just want to give a little goodbye, I'll stop recording, and yeah.
Cool. Well, so this was our first introduction to Bellingham Parks series. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.